Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening. This is another experience of the African Speaks, and I am your host, Ajay the African. One love, one love. Hopefully, everybody is doing well. We've been on this journey to understand the power of the divine self. We have been cooking, as they say, cooking, cooking, cooking. And hopefully y'all are moving. I've had some wonderful experiences in between these segments in terms of responsibilities within the community that allowed me to open up more and more to my higher self. And as I begin to do that, of course, I got to share. I got to share. I got to share. We need to always remember now that we're in this journey, we understand that this journey is about knowing thyself. This whole journey, this whole experience, everything that we're doing when we're talking about the power of the divine self is knowing who you are. And we have traveled some ways. And so we're going to do a minor recap, not a complete recap, because we've been so far along on what we've been doing is we've been ahead on some things. So the minor recap. And in that minor recap, we're going to sit down and take a look back at the pathway to the internal you. Now, in this particular chapter, chapter 22, we went through the processes of going on the inside and going through down into the subconscious. We said that we were breaking through the different brain waves. And if you remember, the beta wave is the most dysfunctional state. And then you drop down into, and that beta wave starts at the age of 12, from a 12 till now. Then you drop down from the beta wave into the alpha wave, and there are 3 levels in the alpha wave. And you go from that 3 levels into that alpha wave into your delta state. The delta state is the alpha. No, you go into your theta. Sorry, your theta state, and that's when you can reprogram some things. That's when the reprogramming of your mind and your thoughts and your processes start in that theta state. And then you go into the delta. That's where, you walking, you walking on water. But then you get to that gamma stage. When you get to that gamma, you're a whole different level of being at that point. And we're going to get to that point. But again, we walk through the pathways of who we are and getting to the eternal you. And at the end of that, we was like, oh, we're going to celebrate the opening of our third eye. And we said it's not like your third eye was wide open, because if this was your first time or you haven't gone that far before, and this was, practice, or you have gone that far and I took you a different route, your third eye opens up in intervals. It ain't like, boom, you do this meditation practice that we have in chapter 22 and you like, no, it's like, when I was growing up, I used to wake up with cold on my eyes, and you could have to get the crust off your eyelashes just to open your eyes, but it's like crustation on your eyes and you can peek through. And so on chapter 2, we were actually celebrating, on chapter 23, sorry, we was actually celebrating the activation of the right hemisphere of your brain. We talked about, we always functioning from the left hemisphere, rationalization. But that right hemisphere is our creativity, it's our intuition, spiritual awareness. And we said in that practice, we went into ourselves to begin to activate that right hemisphere so that you could see yourself in a completely different light. You can sit down and understand who you are and whose you are. And maybe tap into some attributes that you didn't know you have, or even the purpose of why you're here. Now, because everybody was giving gifts and talents and attributes. And so maybe, but what we did was went inside ourselves and we talked to ourselves and said, ask yourself a question. Whatever you want to know at that moment before you come outside of yourself. And so from that chapter, we went to chapter 24. And chapter 24 dealt with mindful consumption. Now that you're in the process of tapping into your highest sense of self, chapter 24 was about making sure that you only consume, this is about your spiritual diet, in all things. All in how you dress, how you talk, how you eat, what you read, what you listen to, the individuals you hang around, mindful consumption. Mm. Talked about what are you going to continue to feed yourself to maintain and sustain the opening of your third eye, the alignment of your chakras, that focal point so that you could see beyond physical sight, mindful consumption. And so I had a series of downloads after this one. I had chapter after chapter trying to figure out which one was next, and I said I had to pause. I said because I got to get you in deeper into who you are. But before we get deep into who you are, we got to talk about how you're feeling in this journey. Because you cannot make it past chapter 25 without understanding it has to be done in the spirit or in the rage of righteous indignation. It can't happen without the experience of righteous indignation. And now let's get this. A lot of people say in the process of spiritual development, there is no place for anger. Absolutely right. No place for blind rage. Absolutely right. However, there's always that justifiable righteous indignation is considered that justifiable anger that you're allowed to experience in this journey. Hmm. And justifiable anger is a moral outrage, and it could social injustice, a sense of disrespect to your being, the core of who you are, and it's not personal. Let's get that. This is not about personal anger. And I know a lot of people who are in the spiritual journey who takes their personal anger as part of this experience. There is no such thing as a personal anger. It's only a righteous indignation of anything that is trying to stop you or hold you back from becoming. Systematic oppression deserves righteous indignation. The mark of slavery deserves righteous indignation. Now, another thing about righteous indignation is also a key motivator. It's a key motivator. Without righteous indignation, it's hard for you to experience the process of change. But we're definitely, so in this, we're not talking about how you're feeling outside yourself. We're talking about the emotions, the emotional intelligence of how you respond to you. Mm. Your self-awareness, who you are. You're having empathy for yourself in your journey. Internal, this is how you get towards your internal motivation to accomplish things. Regulating your behaviors, your actions, you are in this space of pure righteous indignation. You are completely accountable to self. Mm. Completely accountable to self. And you're understanding what are your true skills, talents, and behaviors. I had one brother when we were talking about inside our youth program. Yeah, one love. Yeah, said there's got to become a point where you're sitting down and you might be trying some things to access your higher self, and you realize that this is not your talent. Everybody wants to be a basketball player, but everybody can't play basketball. Everybody wants to be a football player, but everybody ain't great at football. A certain amount of percentages of kids or people or individuals will hit those particular economic niches. Everybody doesn't have that skill or that social skill set where you're interacting with people. How you talk, how you interact, what energy you walk in the room. What do you have when engaging with others? What do you have when engaging with yourself? Let's talk about that. The social skills that you have for you. And when you're dealing with those social skills, what you have for you now, we're talking about, well, what do you mean what I had for me? Again, if you missed the pathway to the internal you need to go through this because you're going to understand. It'll make sense to you. So make sure you go to the African Speaks on the YouTube page and look for this. Look for this one up and go back and take a look at it after this. I always tell people, yeah, don't skip one just to go back to one. Get this information. Go back to the previous if you missed it, because when I mention it, and then it'll make even more sense to you after this. Going back to it will make even more sense. So this way you get to keep up. Now, in that process, you had to go through a door. We took you down into your conscious state into your subconscious state. And there are layers and levels to this. You got pre-consciousness, and then you got subconsciousness, and then you got lower subconsciousness, until you come out of that. You come into a space where it's uh the greater consciousness, right? Or oneness. And we'll get there. We hadn't traveled that far yet, but we will. So hang in there. But when you're going into this room, and I had a lot of individuals walking to this space, walking to this room for the very first time. And once you moved through your own levels of consciousness, you went and interacted with your ancestors, and you went into the corridor of the mansion that is you, and went into a door in which you got a chance to sit with yourself. Now, I can't tell you, I don't know who you sat with, what version of you were able to encounter. And I can tell you, each time when there's segments in my life, I see a different version of me. And I remember when I first did it at 19, I probably only saw myself at age 19, saw myself at age 22. I couldn't travel that far inside myself. No, I'll say this. I wasn't ready to see who I was becoming, but I was able to see in terms of the distance, but I was able to see who I was growing into and who I should have been in the time in which I lived in. Because sometimes you can't give yourself too much of yourself because you may not be able to handle the full weight and power of who you really are. So who did you see? Who did you come in contact to? Who did you become aware of? What was the conversations? Now, some people, may not. And I know a brother who has gone in and said, I didn't experience nothing. He had a lot of blocks to get through. Whole lot of blocks first that he had to go on through. And then I would have taken him. We need to go back to chapter 1. And we need to get you until you internalize this process. Some people jump into meditations and readings and without even dealing with the whole gambit of what this process means. And that's why it's taken me so long to get it. So I don't know who you spoke to. Was it that person inside of you who is trying to shake the chains off? That slave who was still inside saying, look, I'm going to be free. I'm going to be free. Mm. Or did you get to that person who said, I'm out of these physical chains, so I get to move around a little bit? Because some of us are only trying to get to a point where we don't feel restrained. And we want to travel. We want to go see things. We want to have fun. There's nothing wrong with that if you're in the right conscious mindset. But some people, this is all they're trying to get to. My physical chains are gone. I'm not dealing with my mental or emotional change. And with my physical change, let me deal with my savings and my finances so I can move around more. Not realizing that they're still functioning in a slave state. Mm. Because the slavery from one side with the individual wearing the chains, the slavery on the other side, you are the chains. Think about it. Who did you speak to? Did you come across the individual who is that warrior inside yourself? And it is storming outside. I don't know if y'all can hear the thundering. And so if we go out, y'all know what's up. But did you see that person who was a warrior inside yourself and said, you know what? I removed the physical chains. I'm removing some of the mental chains, and I'm going straight to war. I'm straight up angry. I have an anger for the world, and I'm going to go to war to make sure that this never happens to me or nobody else again. I'm going to war. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are layers to this levels of consciousness. Did you reach your royal self? The part of you that exists beyond the mark of slavery. Did you reach that? How far did you get? I can tell you the first time I did it, I was the one holding the chains, not realizing that I was the chains. 20. I had to dive in deeper. So did you reach your royal self? When we sit down and say, peace king, peace queen, one love, you know, were you acknowledging the fact that you were a building of empires, civilizations, sciences? Did you reach that being inside you that fed you the history of you? Or did you reach your divine self? The Father and I are one, a complete manifestation, a child of the Most High, an extension of the Most High. Did you reach the divine you? I don't know who you spoke to when you went through your door or what level, and there's multiple levels in the levels that I gave. And to see the different levels, look up the 10 different levels of consciousness. That's in on the African Speaks. That's a part of this. So which level did you reach? Because in that space with who you are, every time you go, every time I go, real talk, there is more room for more transformation. Let me do that. There's more room for more transformation because there's an ultimate state of being in this process, and you cannot get there. You cannot do it without moving through yourself, going through the levels of consciousness without a state of rage for the righteous indignation that you are not who you were called or created to be. You have individuals who talk about, I live in my anointing, but don't understand the blackness of who they are and what God called them to be, have no connection to history, culture, but they high level preachers. They not where they, again, righteous indignation will have you fighting for what? For the rest of your life. Spiritual warfare. You got to go in this state of spiritual warfare with a sense of self-motivation, where you are mad at you for not being you. And a lot of times people pick and choose when to do this. I'm going to do it on Sunday when I go to church. I wait, I feel like meditating. When my next book comes out, another book, I start doing it. This warfare is a 24-hour, non-stop battle. It doesn't cease, because the moment that you believe that it ceased is the minute that whatever's in you catches up to you, or you get into a state of contentment or stagnation. Why? Because there was a period in time in your day that you stopped fighting internally. You got to be, when you, whoever you met in that room and said that, look, you are higher than, you can be higher than what you are. The spiritual warfare. I need you to fight. I need you to fight 24 hours in your day, even when you sleep. That means you got to deal with your thoughts. You got to be one, emotionally discontent with how you think, with how you live. The root of change is your emotional discontent with your being, or the lack thereof being. That righteous indignation is essential going deeper. You have to be able to sit down and say, okay, wait a minute. What generation of slave am I functioning from? Not self-awareness. What generation of slave am I functioning from? Because as you even, again, this level of self-awareness has these levels until you reach true enlightenment. It doesn't stop. And until you reach true enlightenment, there should always be a hint of, as always, even once you reach it, there's always a hint of righteous indignation. Why? Because we know, according to mindful consumption, the world will keep us down. It's orchestrated to keep us down. Why? Because of how great God called us to be, who we are. The world don't want to see the black planet rise. The fear of the black planet, as Public Enemy used to say. They fear this. Why? Because of the tools. Look in how we were made this way. These chapters will connect to you now if you've seen them all. This righteous indignation in you. This one should be more about what you're dealing with internally. My being, I do not like me. Ugh. The I dislike me so much that I have the self motivation to change it. I don't need anybody around me. I want to know what it's like for me to be in a limitless state. Oh, I just like me so much. I don't like the way I respond. I remember the first time that happened to me. I had an argument with my mom, and I realized how disrespectful I was to my mom. And I paused. And at this time, I was in general membership in my community, and I hung up. I said, "Mom, I'm gonna go through my process. Next time you hear from me, yeah, this is not gonna be. I'm not gonna be the same person. I'm done. I wasn't done with her. I was done with myself." And so I went through orientation, and from orientation, I had SC and SC. I went to BTG, and from BTG, and it's from my community. I went to advanced training, and then of course you hit that plateau sometimes. I sat down, and as we transitioned into different phases, there's no plateau for me. Why? Because I'm always judging, what generation of slave am I in? We live in a world where there are no more physical restraints. Now we live in a world of high technology where we get more information than anything. Are we using that technology to have fun? That's a gauge. Is it only for entertainment? That's a gauge of your level of slavitude. Are you using it for enlightenment? I know some of my ancestors, there was a period of time where they were slaves. Now look at me. Am I worse than they are? Because they were forced. There's no force here. It's coercion, but they not beating me. It's a different experience. So what level you got to have a discontent for it, a definite discontent. Then you're dealing with renunciation and awakening. And in that space of dealing with enunciation and that particular level of awakening, You're dealing with removing whatever hooks from your lower self that has you attracted to the world. There are things about life that you are grounded to, that you have to let go of. Things that keep you attached to the lower version of you. You say, you know what? I'm done with my illusions, my falsehoods. I don't like the things in the world that has my lower self, my lower nature, the physical part of my being still attached. And I know that there's one aspect of my physical self, my lower natured self, that I will fight. And I'm in that battle every week. We like this. Ah, but I know I don't hate it as much as I should, but I'm getting there. Why? Because of this. The more that I read, the more that I understand, the more I try to use that righteous indignation to get me to always function from my higher self. I'm always battling the lower me. This mark of slavery is a gorilla. When you think you out, you in. And you never know where it slips. And then a lot of times people get mad when I can see it in them. And I can make that statement where I see it in them, but they, people don't like it when you sit down and show them themselves. So you got to always be careful, right? You always got to be careful. And so in that space, you got to battle whatever. And then this, when the awakening comes, when you realize it is your attachments to worldly things that keep you down. What are the things inside of you that it's about the world that you can't let go of? That every time you blink, your lower self arises. You can't function from your heart chakra. You can't function from your throat chakra. You can't function from your third eye chakra. You can't function from your crown chakra. Why? Because the lower three, the ones that are based in survival, are always winning. You're stressed out when you don't have a job. You're stressed out when your money's low. You're stressed out for the small things. Your lower self is winning. But when you realize external things are external blessings are created by an internal manifestation of a spiritual awareness and your connection to the divine. So you're always at 24 hours in your dreams of battling. Always battling. And so you got to go into that war with a state of righteous indignation. Anytime you come up against your lower self, man, it's time to fight. Because the world can't experience a greater you if you can't get to it. And the only fight that you know that you can control is what's inside. Because what's inside will generate you creating the reality outside yourself. You don't have I need to get a nice house to feel. No. It's about what's happening internally. That makes the difference. And you got to go at it with a state of righteous indignation. This is an internal war. This battle is on the inside. Where you at? Where you at with your fight? Then there's a psychological insight. A psychologist is that disgust with it's a spiritual release. It's a deep uncomfortability where you one time I had someone look at me and was like, "You disgust me." And I never had anybody say it to me before. But when I heard their version of what they thought they saw, it disgusted me too. And I remember the first time psychologically disgusted with something that was inside of me, the amount of energy it took for me to surrender that to the Most High was a battle. You got to be completely repulsed by the inner images of the dark side of you. You got to be completely repulsed mentally and let it drill down into your heart. That's when we talk about the heart and mind cohesion. This I will not allow myself to be. There is not one dark side of me that I will allow to move forward. That is the motivating factor. Your disgust with your inner sense of you will catapult you deeper down the hallways and consciousness of you so that you're going beyond your limitations. I'm done with seeing the ugly me. Not I'm done with people pissing me off. No, because no one can piss you off. No one can get to you unless you give them that power. And sometimes I sit down and say, yeah, there are individuals that give me that power. And there's certain times where I'm standing in righteous indignation because you're stopping me from experiencing my higher self, and I'm allowing you in. And I'm going to cut that allowance. That darker side of you. I do have a friend that always calls, and as we talk, he's like, yo, I hate seeing myself like this. I don't like myself like this. Do you dislike yourself? Are you disgusted enough with yourself to push you in a state of inner transformation? Can you get to that point? And then there's the hard part of complacency, because I have there's some people in our community who don't even understand it. The ugly sides of themselves always come out, but they do it with a smile. So there's like, oh, I can't see it. At that point, it's just the issue of accepting mediocrity. Why would the divine you accept mediocrity from yourself? And then if I shouldn't accept it because I don't accept it from myself. I really get mad when I produce something that's mediocre. Oh, I get angry. Why? Because I should experience a state of limitlessness, growth, potential. What else can I learn, achieve, move? Oh man, this is subpar. I get mad. So you have to have that sense of righteous indignation to always battle, to psychologically be disgusted with the different sides of you. Now you hold the mirror up to me, man, please. I go to work on myself. You don't have to go to work on me at all. And anybody who's close to me knows that if I'm not doing well at being my best self in a situation or circumstance, and I see myself in the mirror, absolutely, I go to work. I'm built that way. And that's been the blessing of my life since I was 7. Show me what I can't do, and I'm a fight to figure out how I can do it, because I don't like the darker sides or the smaller sides of myself. I don't hide behind any of those masks. I don't hide behind the lower state of my ego. And there's a divine ego too. I'm going to drop that one. That awareness came to me later. Wait till y'all hear that. That's going to be a whole chapter. The divine ego. Yeah. Where there's certain identities of who you are no longer serves in this space. Your higher self. What is it about you that doesn't serve your higher self? That level of disgust is a catalyst for you to transform into the divine you. And that's why when you get to that point, yes, you dealing with that, the alignment of the divine self. What? When you breaking down the issue of your righteous indignation. And realize, so far, righteous indignation, we ain't even talk about the world. We didn't talk about the world. Why? Because you can change the reality of the world when you change the reality of how you see yourself in it. Change how you see yourself in it. That's how they hoodwinked us. They gave us our reality. They took over the continent of Africa, killed all of the teachers, all of the preachers, all of the ministers, and just left the working class. Right? The shaman was almost gone. It was like outlawed to be a shaman. Alexander the Great went in there and tore up the temples. But you have to now go back with inside yourself to go to war, to align yourself with your divine self. You have to do war internally. And this is the best time. Why? Because this is the first time since we were able to break free from those chains, physical, where we have access to more information than we've ever had access to before. And so now we have the ability to read the text and the information so that when we decide to go into this warfare of the divine self, the power of the divine self, we can face our own lies that we have against ourselves. We're walking inside ourselves, dealing with our own misconceptions of who we are. We're seeing through our own BS. I always get mad when somebody tries to put me in a box because I said, y'all too late to put me in a box. You too late. I've had a vision of my limitlessness already. So you can't put me in the box. You can't say this is who he is because I know I faced the ugly truths about me and found myself limitlessness. My mama, before she died, she said, what's your limit? And I got mad at her. I said, excuse me, who you talking to? She said, exactly. One-on-one conversation. She said, exactly, son, I was hard on you because I knew that if I could be hard on you, you would face the demons inside yourself and come out on top. There was nothing that you couldn't achieve. I found out how to get you to tap into you. And that is the process of every parent to make sure our kids never have to get to this point. Now, if your kids are over 12, you got to walk them through this. You got to get them to that righteous indignation so that they can walk through this point. But they under 12, you got 11-year-old, you got a year. Because again, they said, and I don't know if it backed down the study, but they said once a kid hits 12, you're in that beta state, you're in the survival mode, and it's harder to go internally into your subconscious to undo those things. But the minute that you have a child and you're teaching the child about their limitlessness, they will never have to go through this. However, they will still be in constant warfare because they will be aware that the world seeks to make them slaves to it, in it. The Eurocentric genotype does not want you to be a free, conscious being. So everything around you makes you a consumer race all over the globe. We have a global identity that we have to fight, but that first fight starts internally. And this is why we say you have to be careful of your spiritual diet. Everything you eat should be fueling your righteous indignation. I don't like myself when I'm like this or that. So then what do you have to intake to spark the energy to motivate yourself to walk down the darkest streets inside you so that you can experience that higher sense of self? We need that righteous indignation. We need that anger. If we are going to travel through the depths of our consciousness, dealing with just to have an experience of the divine self, that righteous indignation has to be turned internally. I have a friend who she almost rarely looks at herself, and she's a spiritualist, and she's at war with everything outside herself, but doesn't realize that the things that happen outside was a manifestation of the things that are internal. You can't get to collective consciousness without doing internal warfare 24 hours a day. And life, when you start down this journey, life will bring you certain situations and circumstances so it can show you who you are or who you aren't. Why? Because it knows that you want to get through the blocks that the world has placed in you to reach the experience of the higher self. So I ask you again, when you walk through the door, who did you see? Which version of you were you inspired by to become? Who did you talk to tell you, I need you to put up a fight to get me out of here? Help me break loose. Who did you speak to? The only person who can tell you that is you, if you took the process seriously. And know that every time you go through that door, you will see something new. And there's layers inside you where you're always going to have to address it in a state of justifiable anger, righteous indignation. Let it be an internal experience before it becomes external. You cannot like who you are as you are in any situation unless you have become who the Most High has called. And then we can see that in every circumstance, not just because you dress good, not because you speak well, and not because you treat people nice. It's because you build a counter life experience with those of like minds. That is nation building. What? That's kingdom building. When you're dealing with righteous indignation, trying to reach your higher sense of self, you have to be able to reject the internal you. And that's at the highest level of leadership. Highest. Nobody's exempt from this. I know in my at one job, when they would always talk about Trump, they said, "You don't ever get mad." One sister was asking me, "Really?" And we always have these debates and we talk about this and you don't ever chime in. And I know you got something to say. I said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "I'm the maddest person in the room." Because my anger is not blind, it's a righteous indignation. And I pour all the energy I have for the internal battle that I have, and I build a counter institution that helps Black youth never be accessible to mental slavery, or I minimize their experience or exposure to it so that they can find their divine self. Trump can't stop that, and he's not going to. This may not be my generation to see independent Black nation. I don't know. I'm gonna fight for it, but I'm definitely not gonna worry about 100% worry about what someone else is doing for their race. I'm gonna focus on me and mine because we need answers for our community. Getting answers for someone else is only temporary. Building something, that's when you know. I said, I'm the angriest man in the room. Why? Because I can't stop building. Those of us who have stopped, I don't know how you quench when you have righteous indignation. How did you quench it? It's like a fire that you can't get rid of. So where's it at? What do you do with it? How does it disappear? Did you switch it and start doing something different? Share that. I would love to hear that from those who are doing it. Love to hear your story of how you were able to evolve your righteous indignation and to create something, a life experience that Black people can enjoy, not just something that's just for you. Ain't that something? So now that we understand what we have to go forward with, we're going to be able to move forward to chapter 26. Because in this space, find your righteous indignation. Find what sets you afire, ablaze, where you will never give up on yourself or the people around you, seeking to understand the power of the divine self. And with that being said, I can sit down and say, one love.